I don't really think about it very often at all, like that I'm Korean. I just think about myself as an individual. It's sort of like having your bones. It's who you are, but I'm not like constantly thinking about them or something. It's just who I am. My parents decided to move here because well, my father, he really wanted some freedom in terms of his job and what he could do for work. He had a sense of adventure. He always was interested in American culture. I think we were pretty excited, actually, because my brother and I used to watch television, and we were pretty well to do in Korea, so we had a TV. Most people didn't have TVs and things like that. And so occasionally we would see like shampoo commercials or things with him portraying America. And so we thought that people were really clean in America. And then we had these sort of games we played with the other kids, and we thought that they were so wealthy that they would just get fistful of money and throw them on the streets, and the streets would be paved with gold. And I really thought that everyone would have their own yacht. Like you would go in the backyard and there would be your yacht in the backyard. And so when we actually moved here and we went to my great uncle's house, he lived in a really small little house in Seaside, California. And there was no yacht and there was no gold on the streets. And it was kind of dreary. I think I was kind of disappointed. But at first we were really excited. I didn't really understand what it meant. And I think at one point on the flight, like right before we were about to take off, both my parents started like really crying because they were going to be leaving their home for good. Like that's what occurred to me even as a kid. Like, wow, this means we're leaving our home. Before then, it just felt like a fantasy. Like we were just coming to like fantasy land. So I just remember coming in the winter, and it was really cold, and we're all in our winter coats and everything, and we got on the airplane, and back then, it was the old days, so we couldn't do a nonstop from Seoul to San Francisco, so we stopped in Hawaii to refuel, and we got off in Hawaii, and I came out of my winter coat, and it was so hot. I couldn't believe that we were able to get on an airplane. I had no concept of what that meant, and then get off, and then it was like blazingly hot. One thing that happened was that when we came through immigration, the officer wanted us all to change our names. They said, your names are impossible to say, and they want to change my name to Wendy, and my dad to David. His name is Tongdae. My father was adamant. He's like, no, we're not going to change our names. These are our names that were given to us by our grandparents, so we're not doing that. And so this man who was very well educated and had a great job, he came here and he couldn't do anything. So he spent like all like spring painting these fences, and he came home covered with poison oak, and he tried all this stuff. I mean, he did all kinds of menial work. He had bigger aspirations. So he got a loan from the Korean government, and which he was very fortunate, and he was able to open his own business, which was like, I think his first business is he bought a little motel, and he started running that. And then throughout the years, he ended up making money off of that small business, taking that money, buying another one. And so by the end, when I was in high school, I think he was running like 7 businesses. When I was in Korea, and I was quite young then, they were definitely, my parents, like, kind of get around really easily. They were in charge. I relied on them. And once we moved here, oftentimes their English was so poor that we had legal documents or anything that my parents would always have me read it. I mean, I had to really fend for myself because they worked really hard. So they were mostly out of the house. So meals, I cooked a bunch of meals. I started driving really early so I could drive my siblings places. So it kind of, we became very distant from each other, and we used to be really close. Like we used to do everything together, and then once we got to the States, we were pretty independent, and almost to a point, at times I felt like I had to take care of them. And so that was a real shift in our relationship. The first school we went to was a little bit mixed. I don't remember any Asian people, but there were more Spanish speakers. And those kids were pretty friendly to my brother. We were only there for a short time because then we moved to this sort of a nicer suburb, and then we went to school there. We were the only minorities in our school, except for one black guy. So me and my brother and one black guy, and it was really awkward. And the kids were not friendly, and they teased us all the time. And so I'd go to school and be Americanized and hang out with my friends. And as soon as I came into the house, we had Korean food. We sat on the ground to eat, and we spoke Korean. So it was like I lived in two different worlds. And my grandmother actually lived with us most of my life. And so she was really old world. So you really had to speak Korean and be part of that culture to even communicate with her. And the food we ate was really, really different. And back then it was not chic to have unusual foods. So I didn't want to bring it to school, but occasionally I would bring stuff to school. And I remember the first time I brought this thing called kimbap. It looks like, basically it's a sushi roll. All the kids crowded around my desk. What are you eating? What's that stuff? Oh, what's that black stuff? And I said, oh, it's seaweed. And they were like, oh my God, that's disgusting. And the teacher came over and she said, oh, can I try some? And so she had some. She goes, that's really good, delicious. But all the kids were really scared. They thought that was really gross. And I noticed that other kids would bring a lunch, and there was always this white bread, and then this yellow stuff, and then this red stuff smashed together in between two pieces of white bread. I was really intrigued by that. Like, what is that stuff? So I kind of figured, okay, I know bread from the store. I'd see that. And then the red stuff looked kind of like jam, so I got some jam. The yellow stuff I wasn't quite sure what that was, but we had this hot Chinese mustard, like hot mustard. And so I thought, okay, well, that's what it must be. So I put that together and I took a bite, and I was just like, oh my God, that's so disgusting. These Americans, how can they eat this disgusting stuff every day so happily? And then I realized, like several years later, that it was actually peanut butter and jelly, not mustard and jelly. So that's my intro to American food. And then one time, I made a friend, and it was I think like third grade. And she said, "Do you want to stay for dinner?" And I was really excited. I had never had dinner at an American person's house. And her mom said, that would be great. Why don't you call your parents and see if that's okay? And of course, I didn't even bother to call them because they were always working. They were going to be home anyway. So I stayed there, and she goes, we're going to have fish for dinner. I was like, oh, thank God, too, it's fish. It's something I know. It's going to be something weird like that peanut butter and or the jam and mustard sandwich. It was very like Norman Rockwell. We all sat around the dining room table. Her brother was there. She asked us to wash our hands before we ate, and then she came out, like, with her apron and everything, with this sort of platter, with this white thing, like a slab of thing that I didn't even know what it was. It had a couple lemons on top. I'm like, what is that thing? And she said, here's the halibut, here's the fish. And then I looked at it, and I was like, what have they done to the fish? And when we eat fish at our house, it was like the whole fish with the tail, and I got to eat the eye, and Grandma got to pick at the head, and that was like the best part. And so I was like, wow, I've never seen fish like this. I was shocked. And then they served it, and it was like this was tasteless, like bland thing I ever had. But it was actually really, of course it was delicious, and I was really happy to be there and be a part of the dinner. But it was a real shock to me that like something that I thought I took for granted, like fish, would look so different from my household to their household. So that was pretty funny too. And we did not celebrate like American holidays, like Thanksgiving or Christmas or any of that stuff when I was little. And we really only started doing it until when I got into high school, mostly because we instigated it. One day, a friend of mine said she was going to go to a Christmas tree farm and invited me to go. And I think I was just like 12 or 13, maybe 12, maybe even a little younger. And she said, why don't you come with me? And then I thought, great, well, you know what, we can get a Christmas tree this year. I mean, we need to get a Christmas tree. This is ridiculous. We're in America now. I mean, everyone has a Christmas tree. I watch Charlie Brown on Christmas. I mean, this is not fair. So I told my mother, listen, I'd like to go get a Christmas tree for our family. She said, sure, whatever. So she gave me some money, and I went out with her, and we went to a real farm, and we chopped down this tree. It was this huge Christmas tree that I brought home. Bring it into the house. I didn't even have a stand, or I kind of lean it against the wall. It was this dead tree. And then, like, my parents were like, well, now what do you do? And I'm like, I think you're supposed to put stuff on it, because it was all bare. So then I went to the drugstore, and I bought some stuff. But that was sort of the beginning of us sort of incorporating more of those traditional American themes, Christmas trees and things, into our home. But I had to start that. And my parents didn't buy gifts, so I felt sorry for my little sisters because they never had Santa or anything. So one year, I think I was around the same year probably, I went to the drugstore, and I went and bought those like cheesy stockings that you buy from like Walgreens. You know, they still have those. And then I bought candy, and I made sure that they had stockings with like coloring books or something in them. So I think they still remember that actually, because it was pretty special, even if it was cheesy. Now I think back then it was pretty special for them. To define myself as an American, probably when I like finished college, really, or when I went to college, when I started living on my own, and just becoming more. I mean, it's interesting. I think it happened around the same time I became an adult, because I could define myself as who I was without all the baggage of my parents and our background and my siblings and all of that. So yeah, I think as an adult. I remember thinking that my parents were really competent. Like when as soon as we got off the airplane, they knew exactly where to go and where everything was, and they could communicate with everyone and knew the whole system. And I felt really kind of out of it and didn't know where anything was. And then I realized, well, look, now that you're out of the States, you're in the opposite situation where they have to take care of you again. And so it kind of dawned on me what had been happening when we were living here. It wasn't easy taking care of the family, I have to say, but I'm really, in a lot of ways, the good thing was it made me really responsible. It made me feel really independent, and when I became a flight attendant, I could travel to a foreign country. I went to Japan or Hong Kong, and I was able to take care of myself and figure out where to go, and so there was not as much fear, I think, because I knew I could do it. I think in a way it's interesting because, like, I feel like I'm sort of a bridge between my parents' generation and then Sarah and Patrick's, where, I still have I have two languages, and I have this other culture, but yet I'm embracing American culture. So I feel like I'm sort of the filter that kind of, basically bridges the two. I don't really think about it very often at all, like that I'm Korean. I just think about myself as an individual, like that's part of who I am, and the person next to me might be something different, but we're just all who we are, and there's sort of I don't feel self-conscious about it anymore like I did as a kid, because when I was a child, that was like who I was, and I was so identified with that, and now I'm just identified with myself, and that's part of it, but there's so many other parts of me.